Good morning and welcome to the Weekend Wellness Hour. Today I have a special guest who I got to meet just a couple months ago through one of our other guests, Suzanne Margolis, who taught us about the colon. And so here we're going to be talking about a little bit different area of the digestive tract and talking about nutrition. So we have here with us Sarah Bingham, and she is a certified nutrition consultant in Florida, licensed in Florida. And she's also a certified GAPS practitioner. And we're going to go into what the GAPS diet is today. But let me tell you a little bit more about Sarah. She's co-authored a book called Food Allergies, a Self-Help Guide. She's also ran her own nutrition consulting practice for over 13 years and has been a regular guest on National Public Radio, which is pretty impressive. She has worked with a team, as part of a team, for several medical practices using a multifaceted approach to heal conditions such as depression, anxiety, obesity, autoimmune disorders, learning disabilities, and behavioral issues in children. So as you guys know, we are always trying to find people who have these unique ways to help others get better and to look at all the options out there, because the more we can stop slapping Band-Aids on things to, kind of keep a health condition in check, the better we can help each other and help each other learn and just feel better overall. So Sarah, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm really excited to hear everything about the GAPS diet, a little bit about your history as well.
I'm just delighted, Amy. I think what you do is fabulous. So I'm delighted to just give people some ideas of how to do exactly what you said, and that is dive deep and really heal rather than just stop symptoms. And that is what I've been all about. I had my practice in Lenox for 13 years, but I've been at this for 50 years. So that's what I've been studying for 50 years, is how to really enable the body to heal itself. And it's just so exciting. We can do it. Yay.
And it's funny because a lot of times we don't think that we can actually heal ourselves. We think that once we have a chronic disease, that we're at the end. And I know from personal experience with family members that as soon as you change the diet, your body starts shifting, it can start to heal. And I know that you've had some of that in your past as well. So I'm hoping you'll share with us, let's dive into your history a little bit. And if you can share, because it's really a fascinating story.
Well, I dropped out of college a year and a half in because I couldn't figure out why I was there, and I just felt like I was totally wasting my parents' money. So dropped out, jumped into a 13-year-old VW Bug with my older brother who graduated from college, and we drove from Switzerland to Nepal in this 13-year-old VW Bug that was actually towed into Kathmandu, Nepal, finally. But at any rate, it was quite the odyssey. By the time now, just a little background, I really have been intrigued with nutrition even before this trip. So I'd read Adele Davis and some other people, and I think it was just the vegetarian thing. I decided, I'm going to become a vegetarian. And so my idea of vegetarian back then was a whole lot of pizza, mac and cheese, and hot fudge sundaes, baby. I've been the chocoholic my entire life. So that's what I was doing. And so I then got in this car, and by the time we got to Iran, I was diagnosed by the Peace Corps with 2 kinds of dysentery. That was great fun. So they gave me some stuff in Iran. And from Nepal, I then flew on to Japan and lived in Japan for 5 months. Mm-hmm. But by the time I got to Japan, my gut was really a mess, and was diagnosed with a duodenal ulcer. The duodenum is the very top of your stomach. And so my stomach just didn't feel good. And they gave me some powder in Japan. I have no idea what it was. And I was feeling a little bit better, but then I decided I really needed to go home. And so I turned 21 in Japan and then headed home. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. Went home, went to my regular MD and said, yeah, my stomach's still not feeling well. And his recommendation was an antidepressant. And I was like, yeah, no, that really ticked me off because I've never been a depressive type. I'm not, that journey was quite an odyssey for me. I mean, I was not quite myself when I came home because at 21, you're supposed to be invincible. And I was clearly concluding that I wasn't invincible and I didn't feel so great. So I went back to Boston. I decided I definitely did want to finish my undergrad. And there was a physician in Boston who'd literally lost his MD degree. This is like 1972, all right? And he had
Wow.
lost his MD degree because he believed in nutrition. So, so I went to him and I said, what? And he took one look at my diet. He said, oh, Sarah, he said, get off all white flour and all white sugar. I was like, wow. Okay, that was a moment, because that was absolutely 50% of my diet. Okay. So it was like, well, now what? What do you eat? But I was really determined to get better. I was like, yeah, I'm not living like this anymore. This sucks. So I started, that was literally pretty much the day that I said, that's it. No more white flour, no more white sugar. And within a week's time, the changes in my body were just amazing. Now, I'm a pretty high energy person to begin with. So if you can imagine me on sugar, I was a very high percent. I just had way too much energy. And I just noticed that my knee wasn't shaking under the desk anymore. And who knew? I didn't know my knees were stiff. I just figured, well, you know, we make up stories about why our body doesn't work right. And all of a sudden, you know, my knees weren't so stiff. It's like, wow. And there were just all kinds of other subtle things, like waking up and being kissable. If you don't eat sugar, your mouth doesn't rot all night. Just stuff like that. So, so that was the beginning of my absolute love and passion of, well, if you eat this way, what happens then? All right. Yeah. But my undergrad work was in early childhood development, and I was very enamored with special needs kids. And so I was helping with special needs preschoolers, and I kept looking at them going, now this was while I was beginning my journey with nutrition, and I was watching my own body, and I saw these kids, and I said, you know what? These kids may have some cognitive challenges, but they also don't feel good. They got tummy aches, they got diarrhea, they got skin, issues. And then I looked at what they were eating. I was like, well, duh. The parents were giving them all kinds of processed foods. And I said, wow, this is no good. So I don't know if you can hear the background, but it is really storming here in.
I was wondering what that was. Now I know. It sounds like hail.
That little bit, exactly. Yeah. So, and it's getting darker and darker in my room, but get some light in here. There we go. What? So that was sort of the beginning of me just beginning to work and get frustrated with being a layperson. So I went back and got a master's degree in nutrition, and then began to work in earnest with people. And children have always been my love, but I've worked with all ages, lots of adults. And I began to, the master's degree was great for sort of advanced biochemistry, but the holistic, there wasn't anything holistic. And, you know, holistic was a very new phenomenon in 1973, 74. So I was learning through seminars and with all the greats, actually, who are now heads of this and heads of that. I was part of a study group. So began learning and working with children, and went back, got my master's degree, which was terrific, and continued on. So I did have my practice in Lenox for many years, and then took somewhat of a hiatus raising my kids, but I was still working it from home.
Yeah.
And then came down to Tampa. So in my journeys, functional medicine is a big category now, and it was just in its infancy. So I was with all the pioneers of functional medicine then. And at one point, I found myself just taking like handfuls of vitamins and minerals and herbs, whatever, 3 times a day. And at some point, I said, you know what, there's just too many pills. And there's got to be a way that the body can figure this out on its own with really good food. Now, obviously, you've got to get the high quality food. And that's, in our country, that's somewhat of a challenge, but you can absolutely do it.
Yeah.
So I then came across Dr. Campbell McBride. Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride was a woman who was a Russian-trained neurologist who then moved to Great Britain and gave birth to a little boy. And at age 2, he was diagnosed with autism. So here's a neurologist that spends all her time in a psych ward getting and what you said earlier is right. When you hear the word autism, it feels like a life sentence.
Yeah.
It's like, wait. And she was like, no, I don't want to just symptom manage my child. I want to figure out what caused this. She was like, yeah, I'm not putting up with this. So she began to really study and learn, like, well, what's the beginning of the neurological system? What caused my son to be like this? And I think, frankly, because she was raised in Russia, and the rate of autism, I think, was way lower in Russia because they don't have access to as many processed foods as like England did, or, whatever. So at any rate, she's a very bright woman. So she researched and she realized that the center of the universe, as far as your neurological system and as far as your entire body, is indeed your gut. So your digestive system is the beginning, is really where everything starts. You've got 90% of your serotonin, which is your feel-good neurotransmitter that goes right to your brain, starts in your gut.
It's crazy.
I know. So your gut is really your first brain. Your second brain is what's up in your skull.
Yeah.
And it just, knowing all that I know and seeing all that I've seen, it just made so much sense. She made so much sense to me. And she said, well, hey, maybe if I heal my son's gut, I'll heal his autism. She did, and it did. So she reversed her son's autism. And I've seen this. If you catch them in under the age of 5, in particular, when they haven't missed a whole lot of milestones in their development, even after that, there's so much improvement. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to interrupt real quick. Sorry. Do you know what she specifically changed? Like, did she ever document what was she feeding her son beforehand?
Oh, are you kidding? She was a neurologist. She was a doctor. She was a mother, working full time. I know exactly what she was doing. She'd probably fallen into the whole trap that most mothers do, and that's exhaustion and here, eat this. So
easy.
Exactly. Easy, simple. And so I'm sure that she was eating processed foods, etc. Yeah. And what she realized was that was pulling nutrition. And there were also toxins. She really had to look at what kind of toxic load had she been taking on as a med student, as a person growing up. What nobody told me when I got pregnant with my kids was when a woman gets pregnant, all of the toxins in her body get dumped into the fetus. I was like, are you kidding? When I first heard that, I thought, well, what the heck is nature doing? And then I went, oh, well, that's pretty smart. A woman's got a whole lot of eggs, so they can sacrifice if you get the toxins out of your body, and then you'll have a viable pregnancy. And I was like, wow, okay. So take note, if you're listening to this, take some time to detox your body before you get pregnant. So that baby doesn't have to take on all your toxins.
That's fascinating. Wow.
Yeah, I know. Well, and again, it does make sense. And we know now, it has been shown that the average cord blood, when a baby is born, when they check the cord blood of that mother to the baby, on average, over 200 chemicals, toxins, carcinogens in that cord blood. So babies are no longer these pristine beings. And what we're seeing, fully 50% of our children under the age of 10, whatever, have chronic conditions. It can be chronic ear infections, it can be chronic skin stuff, it can be chronic bowel stuff, but our children are not well. And we're becoming sort of deadened to thinking, well, that's just the way it is, and it's like, there's the thunder.
Oh, nice.
That's to accentuate what I'm talking about. I really want you to get that this is really important. This is like, guys, we have got to wake up. And the more mothers get this, and the more they choose what they put in their basket at the grocery store, that is a huge political statement. They're watching, and they're paying attention to what you are putting in your basket. And if you're only putting organic food in your basket, they're paying attention, and they're going to be, they're going to be more organic farmers. A study just came out where within 3 days of changing from a commercial diet, which is loaded with Roundup and pesticides and all kinds of stuff, to an organic food, there was a 70% decrease in glyphosate, which is part of Roundup.
Yeah.
3 days. And our children have 5 times the load as adults of glyphosate. They've got little bodies.
Yeah.
And we know glyphosate affects the gut. It affects the neurological system. It affects the immune system. Organic used to be kind of sexy. It isn't anymore. It's essential.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So you studied under this lady, and then from there you started learning more about different types of nutritional diets, right? Including the GAPS diet?
Yeah, well, the GAPS diet became a real central player. Now, the first thing I always do with people is just get them on whole, unprocessed food. White flour and white sugar, literally, the minute white flour and white sugar, and a study was done with Weston A. Price. I don't know, are you familiar with Weston A. Price?
Just a little bit.
Back in the 1930s, dentist who was so concerned about what was going on with children's teeth. They were so decayed. This 1930, oh Lord, if he was alive today. But
yeah,
in the 1930s, you could actually go around the world, and he took and find native populations that had not been affected by white man's diet. And so he took a sabbatical and went around and literally navigated the globe and went to, 17 different ancestral societies that were still eating what their ancestors had eaten for hundreds and hundreds of years. And what he found was like no tooth decay, like 0.06% kind of deal, okay? And very vital human beings, no chronic illness, no mental illness, just vital people. If they died of anything, it was probably hygiene. But they were very vital and very alive human beings. And within one generation, this was the COVID then was tuberculosis. All right. So tuberculosis was the disease of that time. Mm-hmm. And those native populations had no tuberculosis until they started eating white flour and white sugar. Yeah. And the minute they did, both the adults and the children showed up with tuberculosis and other things. And you began to see malformed babies being born, and cleft lip, and all kinds of stuff like that just didn't exist before. So he documented that. And so I always start with saying to people, we've just got to get the processed stuff out. And I get that. And so, it's really funny because mothers who are really busy just go, I don't have time. Let me just buy something that's already made. The challenge with that is the minute they do that, the kid starts getting hungry all the time. It's actually a high maintenance move. It feels like you're trying to go to low maintenance. It is not. You're actually making your life worse. You're setting up your kid to have chronic ear infections, chronic colds, chronic something, or ornery,
Yeah.
Not
hyper.
Hyper, ornery, can't sleep. There's all this stuff. And what I hear over and over from mothers is my kid's always hungry. The reason they're always hungry is the food doesn't have any nutrients in it. And so they're constantly trying to nourish their bodies. When I take someone through the GAPS diet, or when the parents just say no more white flour, no white sugar, those cravings absolutely go away. And it's like breakfast, maybe for toddlers, for sure, a morning snack. Older kids can go breakfast, lunch, snack in the afternoon, and dinner. That's it. And they're satisfied, they're happy, and you're not being bugged every other minute for, something to eat. But it's absolutely the processed food. You get it out of there and your life just simplifies. I promise.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's fascinating too. I mean, I can't tell you countless people that I know, and even myself, as soon as I got rid of processed foods, I run long distance races, marathons, ultra marathons, all the way up to 100 miles. And when I was training beforehand, I'd get achy. I'd get a lot of I didn't feel well. And first I gave up dairy because I know that my genes does not allow for dairy. And that's like all the soreness, achiness went away. And then it was a matter of processed foods. And it's like, I feel like a new person. I just had all this energy, and it could run back to back races, marathon one day, then the next day, then the next day. And it's like, okay, this is good. And it helps. I know it does. I'm passionate about it.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, in a few months, I'm going to turn 70, and typically I just sort of run circles around my colleagues who don't eat well, because they don't have any energy. They need heck, our 30-year-olds need naps. I'll be talking to a 30-year-old, and they go, "Yeah, I got to come home after work and take a nap." I'm like, "Wow." Okay.
You shouldn't.
Whereas no, I go till 11 at night and up at 6 in the morning and go baby go, and feel good, and have no aches and pains, and it's simple. It's the simplicity. When I have immigrants that come from countries like Thailand or some of these other countries where they're still eating very simple, clean food, whatever, I say, "So what did your parents die of?" And I get this look. There's sort of a blank look from them, and they go, "Well, they just kind of got old and died." And I thought to myself, yeah, that's how it used to be. You would just simply get old and lay down and not wake up one day. But that's no longer now we nutritionally deprive our people with such excellence that it's a 3 to 5 year downhill trail of more medication, which makes you sicker, and then the nursing home and diapers and a god-awful death. So I decided to, as much as I can, there's no guarantees, but I would like to opt out of that. Thank you very much.
Fewer chemicals, fewer medications, more health, vitality, happy living. Yeah,
exactly. So all really the GAPS diet is, and here is her book. And if you go on my website, you can find information about the GAPS diet and whatnot. But Dr. Campbell McBride wrote this great book, and she just makes so much sense. And she calls it, the GAPS diet stands for gut and psychology syndrome. And the reason she said gut and psychology syndrome was she's a neurologist. And so she was looking at the psychiatric ramifications of food. As she began to work with people, and as she began to heal kids, she had parents and other siblings doing the diet. And what she realized was all kinds of different conditions in the body also healed with the GAPS diet. And then she realized it's like, oh, well, duh, the gut is the center. That's where the immune system is created. That's where everything goes awry. So when you heal that, pretty much anything heals. And that's been my experience. I have seen rheumatoid arthritis go away. I've seen lupus go away. I've seen Crohn's and ulcerative colitis basically go away. So I've seen a lot of pretty, those conditions where when you get that word, you think, oh, that's it for life. It's like, oh no, if there's any way the body will heal itself, and there's, of course, never any 100%, but I can promise you people get a whole lot better. So I've just really appreciated, it's a very, I think also because Natasha Campbell McBride was born in Russia, they were closer to ancestral wisdom. So she grew up with bone broth and soups. And again, in Europe, if you go back 50 to 100 years, every meal had broth, with it. You sat down to lunch and dinner and there was broth because mothers knew this was really important. So there was always, they'd always keep the bones and boil them on the back burner. So Dr. McBride, the GAPS diet involves drinking about a quart to a quart and a half of broth every day. And the broth is, well, and again, think about it. In the ancestral times, you got sick, you would be given chicken soup, broth, whatever. Yeah. In fact, when I first came down to Florida in Lakeland, there's a woman who, she's in her late 60s, raised in Turkey, in the hills of Turkey, whatever. And she runs a restaurant. Now, she's been diagnosed with MS. And you watch her run this restaurant, there's no sign of neurological anything going on in her. Yeah. But she makes her own food, and she makes a kick butt broth. She said, Sarah, when I was growing up, we didn't have antibiotics. I'd get sick and grandma would come in and say, here. And she'd have a spoonful of broth and say, start sipping this. And she said, and we get better. And I've seen tons of clients, when they start getting sick, they go right back to stage one of GAPS. GAPS has 6 different stages to it. They go right back there, and that's your healing potion right there. And it's mostly broth, overcooked vegetables because they're easier to digest. What you're stage one of GAPS, you're just doing a timeout on the gut. You're really letting it rest, and you're nourishing it with a lot of broth, and you're putting a teaspoon of sauerkraut juice in it, and that's raw sauerkraut juice. All right. Now, again, think about our ancestors. They didn't have refrigeration. They had to figure out how to keep their food. So they fermented stuff all day long, okay? And that was just water and salt. When I first read about that, I thought, oh man, there's no way I'm gonna make my own sauerkraut. I'm not gonna be canning. I don't do canning. And then I realized, I went, wait. They didn't have high-powered kettles and, were boiling things in jars with special tops and the whole bit. They had water and salt. And that's exactly what it is. So you just mix up some salt with some cut up cabbage, let it sit there in the bowl for a while. Salt begins to pull the moisture out from the cabbage. Then you come back and beat the heck out of it. It's great for getting all your aggressions out. Take a meat hammer, or just take your hands and knead it the way it kneads your lap kind of thing. And the juices start coming out, and then you just pound it into a jar and let it sit, throw it in a cupboard for 10 days, whatever, and you've got your own raw sauerkraut.
Wow.
Yeah, basically they just put stuff in salt water and let it sit, and it ferments. And what we have found is, of course, that fermentation is incredibly rich and incredibly restorative to our guts. So it's kind of similar. You know how raw honey is so healing?
Yeah.
Especially if you have allergies, because the bees are running around to the plants that are in your area. So you want raw honey from your geographic location, because the bees are getting the pollen, from the local flowers. So it dawned on me that's exactly what fermentation is. When you are doing raw fermentation in your own kitchen, whatever, you're picking up all the bacteria, the viruses, the fungi, all the groovy things running around in the air. And those then become incorporated into your own fermented foods. And that is what gives you immunity and strength. Like, everyone just assumes that, oh, I just have seasonal allergies. Like, yeah, everybody does. Well, it's like, yeah, no, that's a sign that your immune system is not functioning well. And again, over and over, after people are done with the GAPS diet, no more seasonal allergies.
Yeah. And I can believe that. I haven't done the GAPS diet, but I switched from non-processed dairy. I just went to plant-based, and I don't have the allergic reactions anymore. Always during, spring season, it was a day or two of just sneezing, and I don't have those issues anymore. And it's really fascinating to look back and reflect. It's like, oh, wow. Okay. Difference.
Now you bring up an interesting point, plant-based. Okay. Rage now, and people are doing vegan and the whole bit. And I actually did that for 3 years because I had looked at all the guys talking about it, and I thought, wow, this makes a lot of interesting, this is very interesting.
Yeah.
But as I was doing it, I was also, I like common sense. As Mark Twain said, common sense is not very common, but I like to think about, so what have we done forever? Okay. And actually, Dr. Weston A. Price, when he went around the world looking at cultures, he was looking for a vegetarian culture. He never found a vegan culture. He never found one. Now, there were cultures that had a lot of meat, a lot of animal products, and cultures that had very little animal products, but all of them had some animal product. And the ones that had very little would climb over mountains to get what they could, because they recognized that pregnant women needed them, that certain people that got ill needed it. And it was sort of it was very interesting for me to sort of keep thinking about that. And in my practice, what I see very clearly is some people feel miserable off of all meats, and some people feel good. I mean, they just don't need that much animal product. And so in my practice, the journey I take my clients on is, what's your body asking for? And it's very clear, your body, right? I mean, I'm sure
Yep.
you found it in your body. It's real clear. It's like, yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's 2 thumbs up, and yeah, that's 2 thumbs down.
Yes, you learn quickly.
Yeah, exactly. I know how to make myself feel really lousy.
Yeah.
If I need to.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to tell you real quick. So I've traveled around the world, and one place I visited a couple of years ago was Mongolia. They're a huge meat-centered culture. And I have to say, I was shocked. Most people didn't live past their like 50s and 60s. And when I saw people, I saw a young lady my age, I thought she was 10 to 15 years older than me, and she thought I was in my early 20s. I enjoyed that, but I was like, I was shocked. And, her perception of what a late 30s or mid 30s year old woman would be was so different from what I'm used to. And even people in their 50s and 60s we saw, they looked like they were 100 years old. And it was so sad. And I know they have harsh conditions, harsh winters, but part of it was they didn't purport many vegetables, like the biodiversity that we know is so important for the gut. Having a wide variety of foods that provide a mixture of nutrients for your gut microbiome, they didn't have that, as at least from all the different areas that we visited, and it was shocking.
Yeah, well, when were you there?
I was in there September, October of 2016.
Yeah, you see, by then they have processed food. It's gotten everywhere.
Yep.
And they have left their ancestral knowledge.
Yeah.
And like Dr. Cameron McBride visited Eskimos, and they were thriving, beautiful teeth.
Yeah.
They were just worn down from chewing because the stuff that they were chewing from the ocean, the seaweed or something, had sand in it. So literally, they were sanding down their teeth as the years went by. But they were all in good shape. But yeah, it's a harsh life. I can't remember what the lifespan was up with the Eskimos. But again, yeah, you can go as far as Mongolia, and still the processed food has entered their lives. And yeah, you see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think it's important, plant-based truly means lots of plants and less animal products, which I think, makes total sense. And for most people, they feel great with that.
Yeah.
And yet some people really thrive on a heavy animal diet. So it just depends.
Yeah, genetics. So we talked a little bit about stage 1 of the GAPS diet. Can you go through some of the other stages?
You bet. And again, when I'm introducing a mother, often it's mothers coming, really wanting to heal their child. And this really, it is an undertaking because all of the food needs to be home cooked. And so for many women, it's like, really? But if you get good with crock pots, with Instant Pots, you can begin to really make some beautiful food. And I promise you, at the end of the journey, all the mothers say to me, this was actually wonderful. And in many ways, it's kind of like what COVID has done for many families. It's slowed things down. It's the slow food, movement of, oh, wow, if I actually make incredibly nutritious food, my kids actually enjoy it and sit around the table. I had a mom of a 5-year-old who was severely autistic. I mean, he was nonverbal and had huge digestive issues. She'd spend an hour and a half at each mealtime just trying to get some food into him, and he was very underweight. By the time, and she had 3 sons, 3 little boys under the age of 5. So she also didn't realize that you could sit those 3 children down around a table and have a meal without a TV or some screen going. Yeah. So she had a whole lot of stimulation, which is way too much neurological stimulation for young children. And these kids could not attend and would not sit and eat. So she just gave them whatever they would eat, which is, if you let a child decide, you're in trouble and you're off and running with processed food. At any rate, it was probably 15 days into GAPS, and her son, who had never eaten anything green, wouldn't eat much of anything, was now sitting at the table with his hand clasped and saying the prayer, and then relishing and digging into a big bowl of vegetables and organic meat. and eating with delight. And his two siblings were sitting around the table with mom there, and they were all eating. Beautiful stuff.
So neat.
So that's the kind of, and this mother, by the way, when she was pregnant with, and before she was pregnant with her first child, who turned out to have, to be autistic, she was working in an apple orchard spraying with glyphosate, with Roundup.
Oh God.
But she had a huge load, and he did too. And it took him, it was tough in the beginning. The first 3 days are when you're really detoxing, and children often go through, it's hard to watch because they don't feel well. You can feel like you have the flu. You can, I've had children, he just pretty much didn't want to eat for 3 days. He sipped a few things, had a little bit of water. But then it finally turns. Once things get out of the system, then all of a sudden the appetite begins to come, and he started eating. But these are the challenges with stage 1. By the time you get to stage 2, stage 2 isn't much different than stage 1. You're still drinking a whole lot of broth and eating stewed vegetables and stewed meat. And the meat is very important. Dr. McBride says vegetables are cleansing and animal products are building. So we need both. And children definitely need animal products because they are building at a fast pace. So you're just dropping egg yolks into the broth. And this kid loved them. He was doing 12 eggs a day by the time that was stage 3.
Oh my gosh. And that's not too much?
Well, you would think that, wouldn't you? And yet, Dr. McBride says that egg yolks are phenomenal. The fat in a good free-range chicken, again, this is the kind of chicken we were raised with, which is, chicken that's out pecking on the earth and loaded with minerals. The yolk is incredibly nourishing to our adrenals. Our adrenal glands are the ones that take the stress from life. And it's incredibly nourishing to our brain and our neurological system. The fats in eggs are very, very, when you think about it, that's what that's what feeds the chick. So at any rate, yeah, he was, now I didn't know that she was feeding him, but basically I say he can have as many eggs as he wants. And at one point I was talking to the mother during this process. I said, so how many eggs is he getting? She said, he's eating 12 eggs a day. I said, wow, but he wanted them. And I think he knew that he really needed that fat. So I did suggest that she back off a little bit. But at any rate, so by stage 3, you're on eggs and avocado and a lot of different veggies. And with each stage, you're now progressing, widening the choice of foods. And by stage 4, you get to roast and fry things again. Whereas at the beginning, it's mush.
Cooked stuff. No raw at this point.
That's
Nothing
right.
like hard or crunchy. Okay. So you're really making it easy on the digestive system.
That's right. And absolutely no grains. Now, dairy is an interesting question. Many of us are from Northern European descent. If you look at your ancestry, most of us, perhaps, many of us, at least from Northern Europe, should be able to handle dairy. However, what we have done with dairy in this country has really created a mess. And most people are actually reactive to dairy. The grand majority of my clients, if I take them off gluten and dairy, they just feel 100% better. It just makes a huge difference. And the gluten is attached to wheat, and the wheat crop is loaded with glyphosate. We're right back to Roundup again. They figured out that 2 weeks before you harvest, if you soak the crop with Roundup, it desiccates, it dries up the berry, and it kills the plant, so it's easier to harvest. So what are they harvesting? They're harvesting wheat and Roundup. So if you're eating any commercially made flour, I don't care whether it's whole wheat or white, if it doesn't say non-GMO, if it doesn't say, basically you just want organic.
So organic grains are okay then in your world. Okay, right, on the person, right?
That's right.
Genetics.
Some people can handle grains, some can't. Some people can handle. Now, for me, I feel best on gluten-free grains. I do not feel good off grain. And I've done that. I did the GAPS diet, and I feel better with some grain in my diet. And I've had clients that the grains just knock them down. They don't feel good. So it's all that good stuff. So at any rate, at the end of the GAPS diet, I help people then transition and begin to, by the time you've done, this is a 30-day run with GAPS. It's 6 5-day stages. And at the end of that run, there's still some other foods that you need to experiment with, and I teach you how to do that. But the bottom line really is learning what's best for your body. And it becomes very clear, very obvious. I had a 7-8-year-old who was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. Now, if you know what typically goes on in the medical world with ulcerative colitis, it's basically a downhill slide, where it's medication, 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 then they cut your colon out.
Yeah. And that's scary. That's irreversible. And if we pause and think, okay, our genes get expressed by the nutrients and nourishment they get. So if we start changing that, then we change how we feel, act, our organs run. And again, like I totally believe everyone's genetics is different. So what makes me feel the best and how my body responds is going to be completely different than someone else. And so I even tell people with what I do, I say pain is a signal from your body to your brain that something is out of position. But I also believe that goes along with the organs, that when your organs start talking in a bad way, we need to listen and say, okay, what are all the options? Food obviously is a huge one because we do it 3 times a day or more. So.
Exactly. What makes you deaf to your body is processed food. The minute white flour and white sugar goes into your body, your innate intelligence gets blocked. You can't feel that. And what was interesting, because the GAPS diet sort of clears the plate and simplifies so much, it turned out this kid was just totally reactive to tomatoes. And this was a kid who basically only ate food if it was with ketchup. So, so he was a total ketchup freak and ate just ketchup all day long. It was tomatoes. But how would you know that? And I've taken other kids through, and it's different for every child. But going back around to the whole dairy question, Dr. McBride talks about raw dairy, and raw dairy is a very different product than pasteurized or homogenized milk. And so many people can handle raw dairy, or I still can't handle cow dairy very well, but I can handle goat. So goat cheese, goat yogurt, and sheep yogurt. And if you think about those animals, think about what cow's milk is meant to do. Cow's milk is meant to create a 1,000-pound animal. We're getting close in the country as far as humans, so it's got a whole lot of protein and a whole lot of growth factor and whatnot to create a very big being. And so for many people, it makes them very mucousy. It's just too much, it's too much growing. Whereas sheep and goats are around 150 pounds, and so are we. And we know in ancestral times, if a mother couldn't nurse, we would use goat or sheep milk.
That's fascinating. I've never heard of anything like that. The whole size comparison. It's an interesting way of thinking about it.
It's kind of to me, it just sort of makes a bunch of sense. And
it does.
Been proven out, with children. So for some people, raw dairy is incredibly nourishing and incredibly healthy. And I've had children recover using raw dairy. So again, it's that's something we experiment with the GAPS diet. So the GAPS diet is what I use when there's pretty severe stuff going on and there's a real need to bring things around. There's that thunder, so listen carefully. But otherwise, I really guide people towards whole foods and figuring out sane lifestyles. This is the other issue with our children. We have gotten so fast. Our children are very anxious. And I think they're anxious because there's no rhythm in their life and they're being exposed 24/7 to TV, news on all the time, parents talking about anything and everything, and just a lifestyle that has what we call no white space. In advertising, you know that if you fill up a page too much with words, nobody reads anything, that you always need white space. Well, hello, we need white space. And I think a lot of families have seen this with COVID. They've realized that, wow, just sort of staying home and not having to race around like 24/7 is actually kind of nice. And So it's really learning that balance of creating a more systems and rhythms. And we're very rhythmic creatures. We're rhythmic to the sun, the moon, our sleep cycles, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So these are all the things that really need to be addressed when you're dealing with severe illness. And if you're just dealing with kids that seem to get sick too much and that basically they're healthy, get the white flour and the white sugar out of your life. And I promise you, things will begin to turn around. And if they don't, then try getting dairy and gluten out. So those are the steps that I take people through.
Okay. So you mentioned autism. That's a big one. And some, helping kids. What are some other disorders that you've helped people with, or other conditions that you've seen?
Colitis, Crohn's disease,
Okay.
Rheumatoid arthritis.
Okay.
Hashimoto's. I've done a lot of thyroid work. I've worked with a physician who saw lots of thyroid conditions. And after the GAPS diet, the autoimmune conditions, just the antibodies go way down, way down.
Okay.
And you can just keep working them. And even hyperthyroid, Graves' disease. So it's what Dr. McBride says, pretty much everything heals. And who on this planet has never had an antibiotic? and how many women are taking birth control pills and no one has told them that really messes up your gut flora? And that's why some women go nuts on the pill. They feel psychologically totally off.
Yep. I know that one.
That was me too. So we were blessed because we got off of it.
Yes.
But if you're on it for a long time, and what I see, in children and adults that have Crohn's, ulcerative colitis, they give them immune suppressants. It's like, what? It just makes no sense to me. The immune system is off. Well, let's heal it rather than stop it. It just does not make any sense. And then months and months and months on an antibiotic. And if that's going on, Dr. McBride says, basically any prescription drug alters your gut flora in not a good way.
Yeah, I totally and utterly believe that. I have stories of me ending up in Mayo after being on an antibiotic, and I was a wreck for a couple years and went through so many different tests. And I suspected it was an antibiotic for a dental procedure because everything in my life just crashed right after that. And it took a long time for it to heal. And a lot of searching, and traditional medical doctors had no idea. And I finally ended up at a very, very well-known gastroenterologist through Mayo, who finally told me to start very similar to a GAPS diet. She knew that I couldn't do meat because of cholesterol reasons, but it was stewed vegetables, roasted. It was everything very soft, and that slowly healed my gut. And at the same time got off the birth control, that was making me toxic. So I'm very, very passionate about nutrition, and a lot of people who know me know that as well. And I'm very strict with it. And I tell them, I said, I will not criticize anything you do, but understand what I do is just to make me feel good. So please don't criticize me.
Yeah, exactly. And tolerance and understanding for one another that I've never had trouble, and some people do. They feel like they're being, if friends come or whatever, now they have to bring all this god awful food into their home and eat it with them. And it's like, no, don't be doing that. You have to live with your body, and you've got to figure out what works for you. And again, it's also good to find people who are believing the same thing so that you can have little communities. I was a single mother a lot, raising my kids, and I found 3 other women that believed in food the way I did. And so we had cooperative cooking. So Monday, all the 3 other families would come to my house. I'd cook dinner for them, and it's much more fun to cook a whole lot of stuff. Yeah. Then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'd go to house B, C, and D. And so we didn't have to cook, and we also had adult company, and we got the good food in. So there's lots of ways to do that. The most important step you've got to take is, that's it, draw the line. Yeah. Because they've shown sugars, as far as I'm concerned, heroin and cocaine are nothing compared to sugar. We know that sugar is like 3 times more addictive than cocaine. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's like, it does not belong in your house. Get it out of there. If it's there, you'll eat it. I will. Anybody
Yep.
will.
Absolutely. Because we're human. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we wrap up here, I have like just a couple questions. First is, what are the major challenges that people who want to start this diet, what are some of the challenges you see?
Um, Often, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So often the parent, at least one of them, often mom, has got some neurological challenges. They're ADD, the organizing, getting this thing done can be a real challenge. And that's why when I start with people, I give them my cell phone. If I need to be on the phone with you every day for the first 5, 10 days, whatever, we do it, because organizing, getting it done can be a real challenge. And now you're accessing different food. You are spending more on food, but again, as a nation, we spend the least of all industrialized nations on food. So I figured out what I spend, and it's more in line with Japan and Italy, I think. So there's an adjustment that you got to get, that you get what you pay for. It's like,
Yeah, it's true.
yeah, you
It's
can have
true.
a stupid vacuum cleaner, you can have an Electrolux, all right? And one of them gets the job done a whole lot better.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sort of, I feel like, thankfully anyhow, I'm sort of living proof that you eat a ton of vegetables and you do and you treat your body well, and obviously you exercise and all that, you'll get what you want. But mothers need a lot of help. Women are just straight out. And they're working too much. And the other thing I would just encourage women is, if you're trying to raise children within the household, if there's 2 adults, it should be 1.5 jobs, not 2 full-time jobs, unless you're really willing to pay to have someone clean, cook, do a bunch of stuff. And even then, the quality of your relationship with your children, who's got time? You just don't. They're up at 6 a.m, out until 7 p.m, time for bed. You've got, quality time of, it's not real quality because you're like exhausted. It's like, how do you do that? Well, you don't really. So I really encourage parents to get, to get real and downshift and lower their lifestyle if they need to, because having been there, having now grown adult children, there's nothing richer than being towards the end of your life and realizing that, that you've created 2 wonderful human beings to pass on. So it is. And some people, it's a decision. Make the decision once and then carry through and figure out what you have to do to get through the barriers. If you're deciding every day whether you're going to do the GAPS diet, you'll never get there.
Yeah. Totally understand. So this has been a wonderful conversation. How can people reach you?
They can go onto my website, which is fastfoodhealing.com. I teach you how fast you can heal with food alone, and we all need to heal from fast food. So that's the name of my website, fastfoodhealing.com. And email me at Sarah with an H, SARAH, at fastfoodhealing.com. And feel free always to get in touch with me. I'm always glad to talk with you, 10, 15 minutes on the phone to see how we could work together.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I know you are a great resource and wealth of information, so really appreciate you coming on today. Thank you so much. And any last little piece of advice you would share?
Yes, just get white flour and white sugar out of your life, period. If that's all you do, I promise you will see a huge change. And Amy, you're just wonderful. And keep watching Amy because she's great.
Thank you so much. So thank you all for tuning in today. We really appreciate you joining us and learning more about nutrition and your health and how you can heal. So have a wonderful rest of your weekend. We'll see you again next week. And take care, be healthy. See you guys soon. Bye.